What the Chevron decision does is the Supreme Court essentially ruled that any administrative agency in this country is unconstitutional. You know, the way Congress, people need to understand how laws are passed in America. This is not self-evident. It's a little bit technical, but bear with me. Congress passes a law that says, like the Clean Air Act, air must be clean. And then it delegates the authority to a government agency, in this case, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, to hire scientists to research these questions and to figure out what standards would create clean air and comply with the law for all sorts of chemicals, dioxins. You know, we saw the dioxins released into the air in East Palestine, Ohio, in the Norfolk Southern train derailment. All of those issues are regulated by our government under laws passed by Congress. Without these specialized administrative agencies to implement laws passed by Congress, in my opinion, the entire federal government pretty much falls apart. Like issues related to environmental protection, clean air, clean water, workplace safety. There's no way to create rules to enforce laws passed by Congress. The court has essentially engaged in a judicial power grab where they're trying to take all of those questions, those technical questions. I mean, tens of thousands of questions like this happen every year in a complex society like the United States with a complex economy. And they're trying to grab them from the administrative agencies and bring them into federal court where they'll all become their own legal case, which is just an utter disaster. They basically dismantled the administrative state, which is so necessary to enforcing laws passed by Congress. I mean, Congress can't really pass complex laws. They don't have the expertise. Congress can't regulate how many dioxins can be in the air, to keep like a level of safety. They don't have the expertise. They have to delegate that to the EPA. And the Supreme Court has ruled they can no longer do that. So essentially, every government regulation, every rule to protect us, to protect consumers, to protect people who are victimized by financial fraud, so we can live in a clean environment. That all just got dismantled overnight. I mean, it's really shocking. I actually think it's dumb as hell. If you believe in a capitalist system with mega profits for corporations like exists in the United States, the Chevron decision is still very dumb because there's no way to actually regulate a complex economy that is really oriented toward creating corporate profits without these administrative agencies. So, I think that whole thing is an effort by the extreme right to destroy the role of the federal government, to render government totally dysfunctional as part of a political plan so they can then cite this dysfunctionality that they themselves have deliberately created as evidence government doesn't work. Because government is the only thing left that can actually help people who are being screwed over in our society. They don't want government to exist except for military and policing. They don't want anything to get in the way of these profits because when government gets involved to protect people, there's regulation. Profits go down, even though they're still high, they go down a little bit. They don't want any of that. This is a harrowing decision. There is no complex society. There's no advanced industrial economy in the world that has done this or would ever do this. This is a further weakening of our country at a fundamental level. So the Chevron case, to me, is something they've been chomping at the bit to do for decades. And they finally, through a bunch of shenanigans to get these right-wing extremists on the Supreme Court, got it done this week. And I think the consequences for our country are disastrous.
I definitely agree. I think this is something that's going to reverberate for a very long time. But I almost feel like we're at a point now that the more decisions like this happen, the more people are coming to terms with the fact that corporate special interests have captured our government. That is essentially what this is. I've been saying it forever. There are people who get distracted by the minutia of different issues of the day. And I'm thinking, whether it is presidential immunity, whether it is legalizing bribery, which, let's face it, it's already legal. They just haven't said it officially. And then, of course, you have the criminalization of homelessness. And we see it down here in Fort Lauderdale, where basically if you're caught sleeping on a park bench, they're going to literally, the popo's dragging you out of town kind of thing. And then ultimately, and the worst one of all, because again, everyone is all caught up with Trump. But at the end of the day, this Chevron deference decision is as bad as anything that has ever been rendered by the court. And it's all in the name of corporate profit. And no matter who has to suffer for this, and there will be many that will, it almost boggles the mind that people just think it's acceptable that we can have contaminated water and contaminated air. I don't think it's acceptable. So at what point do people just say it, enough is enough?
Let's take a step back, okay?
Okay.
In my opinion, there's been a judicial coup in this country by the corporate right through six people, six unelected Supreme Court justices, okay? Three of whom were named to the court by presidents, right-wing Republican presidents who never even won the popular vote before they took office. Those six people are, in my opinion, illegitimately staging a coup to completely change the character of American society, and they are unelected. Six people pretty much control, to a great degree, what kind of society we can live in, what kind of freedoms we can have, whether the unhoused who can't afford housing are allowed to sleep outside without being jailed, whether our president is allowed to commit a crime while in office, like Donald Trump did multiple times. Remember the slate of fake electors? He was trying to steal the 2020 election, and the court ruled today that that could be an official act, not subject to criminal prosecution. Why are they protecting Donald Trump? This is a political court. It's an activist ideological court. They try to hide their decisions, act like it's rule of law, and they write these elaborate legal opinions. But in reality, they take political positions through the law. To me, they have no legitimacy. And I don't know what the answer is. I almost think, given the ruling on the presidential immunity, essentially a president can commit a crime while in office and never be prosecuted, Biden should think about literally disbanding this court. Disband it.
Well,
Issue an
he's not
executive
going to.
decree to disband it.
Sure, he's not going to do that, but I don't think that that is out of line. I also think
But
that the other issue.
obviously he's not going to do it. But
Yeah.
let's start having the conversation, because
Oh, absolutely.
this can't go on. And President Biden, I mean, God, there's kind of an intermediate solution, which is to expand the number of justices on the court. But he wouldn't even support that. And this is the same court that basically stole the election from Al Gore and gave it to George Bush. This is
The
the
one
same
election that
court.
was the one election that was stolen.
This is the same court that, in Citizens United, essentially allowed a corporate takeover of the entire American government. I know this firsthand. I was prosecuted by Chevron lawyers who put me in jail for winning a big pollution case against Chevron. And they basically captured a portion of our judiciary. What's that about? But that wouldn't have happened had these series of decisions over the last several years, and have been accelerated over the last week, not been handed down by a political court. People need to stop thinking about our Supreme Court as judges and understand that it's an unelected political branch of government that is on a rampage to take as much power as it can for itself away from the executive branch, that is the president, the administrative agencies, and away from Congress, which also has been seriously weakened by corporate money and can't even get its act together enough to pass the most basic laws. We're done, okay? We are being run by six unelected judges. I'm talking about political power and executive power has now been shifted into one branch of government, the most anti-democratic branch, the one branch that does not hold elections, and where three of the six justices who are doing this had essentially had their seats stolen from Democrats, over the last several years. So I'm really upset about this. And I think people need to recognize it for what it is. And I'll say this, the media is reporting on this like, oh, it's bad for the administrative state, or it's going to undermine workplace safety regulations, and it's going to be bad for the environment. Yeah, it's all that. It's worse than that. Okay, this is a wholesale destruction of the federal government, of the function of the federal government. It's not just a problem for certain things, although it's that. They are going after the very idea that we can have a federal government for anything other than the military and policing. That's what this is really about here.